When are we going to see the Fzone Astra-Stream in action? It is. Hello everyone, this is Bentley. So last week we talked about the capacity of Fzone Fancy Boy, the Astra-Stream 15-liter canister. Some would call it like the competitor to the ADA Superjet, and there are other people who call it like a knockoff or a discount. Let's not get too derogatory, right? But we need to put some testing in on it. I have it set up now on Fallen Forest, and also this is going to act as a little update on how Fallen Forest is growing in. You'll notice no more sponge filter, and when we get to some of the close shots, and we'll shift to some of those now, you'll notice there's kind of a big gap where the sponge filter used to be. I've added some plants. You can see there's a little bit of algae here and there. There's some plants that are not doing very well. Most of the Anubias Nana Golden just melted on me. Was not happy. That plant can be really finicky sometimes, and it's in this particular tank it's been very finicky. But I've added some crypts. So we originally planted only crypt lutea into this tank. I've added in the field of lutea, I've intermixed some Beckett Eye. So that's the stuff that's a little darker, not quite as bright green. That just gives us some texture differences, a little variety. And then kind of up along some of the wood, I removed some Jacobsoni pink crypts from one of my other tanks and planted it into Fallen Forest. They're starting to fit in, but the thing that's most obvious going to jump right out at you is I added a couple of larger pieces of Anubias from my own personal collection out of some other tanks. Those are on the right-hand side of the tank. And then the obvious, the Tiger Lotus is doing freaking amazing. It's doing exactly what I wanted. It's popping up over the wood, kind of fanning out, creating this big, beautiful, bold splash of red on both sides of the tank. And then there's also a little bit of Pogostemon erectus in this tank. It's not doing phenomenally well yet, and part of that is just dialing in this tank, dialing in the CO2, dialing in the nutrients, and all that kind of stuff. So, with that being said, now that you're kind of just getting a feel for how the tank looks, it needs a little gravel vacuuming just to get some of the detritus that the wood naturally causes out. That's what I'll probably be doing while you're watching this. At the time of filming, it was the middle of the week. I've been working my brains out, but so far, I want to talk a couple things about this filter. Number one, my preferred settings. I have this on constant at speed 1. So I actually have this at the lowest speed setting, and you'll see it moves a decent amount of water, and this is not the fault of the canister, but the glass I chose. So this floating skimmer in this one, I think it needs some kind of dampening ring or something to help seal it a little bit better, because when I start putting this thing at higher speeds, if I go to something like 3 or 4, this very regularly is just pulling in a ton of air. And then the canister has to purge that air. And that's the only time I really hear noise out of this thing. In fact, I want to cut right now. The only things that are running in this room, I have my primary air pump off. I have my dehumidifier off. There's one small air pump kind of over there that is on. You'll probably hear that a little bit. And then other than that, it's water movement from all the other filters. Just listen to the pump. Do you hear that? It's so quiet. Oh my goodness, is it quiet. It is almost incredible just how silent this particular filter runs. The only time you really hear noise is, and again, I'm going to put this on the glassware because I've played around with it enough over the last few days. I've literally sat here. So after I set it up, I sat here for like half an hour, just making sure nothing went wrong, all that kind of stuff. And I noticed when I put it to like 3 and 4, it would just be purge air, purge air, purge air, and that's just, and I could watch the actual inlet, and it was just, I could tell because of the type of inlet, and it's not quite as well dampened, it's just struggling to pull as much water without pulling air down at the same time, which that's partially what you want a skimmer to do, right? We're creating a weir. We're doing this on purpose, but it's just pulling it too much. And that might just be that the glass needs to be a little bit wider, so the actual like inlet, and then it dampers down a little bit. You probably would see this with like metal, or if you were to build your own out of some kind of PVC. You probably wouldn't run into this problem so much as, like, say, the cheaper glass lily pipe combos. But, you know, I wanted something that wasn't going to cost me like $200 for glassware, because there's super nice stuff out there, but man, is it expensive. I think that's really what the case is when it comes to when it was purging air. When I get it set at 1 like it is now, I don't have that problem. Very rarely will it purge a very small amount of air, but that's usually after I turn it off if I'm feeding. And it's easy. You got a nice little push button that has a wait timer. It's a 10. You push it again, it's 20. You push it again, it's 30 minutes as a wait. And then there's off on the power button. And then you can turn it back on and it goes to whatever your selection was. It has a couple different modes. Really, I only care about the constant mode. I'm doing a freshwater planted tank. I want constant flow. I just have it at the lowest flow setting. And even then, like you can see in the video, it's plenty of water movement. It's doing a great job. You've got a good amount of surface agitation, and when the CO2 is running, the CO2 is being well distributed through the tank, so it's doing everything I need it to do. One little thing that I will note, a lot of people that you'll see who maybe have, if you've seen other videos of this, they typically have this canister sitting on some kind of pad to dampen the noise more. Mine is sitting on a bare hardwood floor. Well, laminate, but it's sitting on a bare wood floor. There's no pad, so it's just metal on wood. And I did this on purpose because I wanted to test noise. And you heard it. None. None. And I'm sure people are going to be like, well, yeah, man, for a $350 plus filter, it better be quiet. Agreed. But it is good to see that in practice, so far, it is doing that. Now, we'll see over time, as I get through some of this stuff, how it behaves. Let's talk about one of the other things with this particular filter. Just now that I've had some time to monkey with it, I've been playing with some settings. I've sat here for long periods of time, watching the little baby rainbows swimming in this tank. Priming this thing sucks, plain and simple. There's no priming assist, and if I were a handy person, I would build something into it, where you have a way to like purge excess air and prime it very easily with like custom PVC work and stuff like that. But the way that I had to prime this is so from the quick disconnect on top, right? I removed the tube that is the outlet so that I only had the part going straight from the pump. And in the center portion of the quick disconnect, I had to like apply suction. I had to apply suction and get the water to start flowing from the inlet tube down into the canister. Because despite the fact that I'd filled the canister almost all the way to the top before sealing it up with water out of a couple pitchers and stuff like that, after I had it all set up, it was not enough to basically fire itself off. You had to start the siphon and get the siphon going, and then lock it off. And once I had siphon going and I could see water coming in, I just locked the siphon down, or locked the quick connect down at the top of the pump, reconnected it to my outlet, and then reopened it back up. It's pouring water down into there, and then from there I could fire it up, and the pump fired up. It purged all the air, got itself running, equalized, and looks like this. Looks nice. It's, again, you guys know that I'm a function over form person. So, is this a perfect display? No, it's in a rack system. You can see some tubing over here, right? But I don't care so much about that. If I'm focused in and I'm trying to take photography or videography on the tank, I can focus in on just the tank, and it looks great, right? And that's probably one of the most important things. Does it look good to you? Is it worth it to you? Some final thoughts. You guys remember in the last video I had that huge bag of media. I swapped that out. So if you remember those smaller black bags, I basically 3/4 filled about 6 of those bags, maybe 2/3, in order to get my 5 liters of media in 6 bags, and then just stacked two alternating up the filter on top of those 2 giant sponges that I put in. And it's good to go. I have great flow. I'm getting what I need. Now it's just a matter of letting biological filtration and bacteria build up in this system from what is naturally happening, the wood and the plants and all that kind of stuff. We've removed the sponge, so that ugly thing's no longer there. It did run for about a solid day with the sponge and stuff all intact before I removed the sponge, just to make sure that, just in case something went wrong, there's a backup set of filtration in there. I didn't expect anything to go wrong, but we want to be careful. So what's next? We have a gap where we need to put some extra plants, and we've got other plants we need to grow in or maybe move. It might be that the Pogostemon erectus, where it is just not enough spot to get enough light, and I'm tinkering with the light to get it where I want it. So, over time we're going to let this thing grow. Some plants might move, but there are some new plants that are going to come in. I've got some ideas to add an extra little pop of something interesting in there. So when we do our next update, you'll get to see something neat. And then from there, let me talk about what I'm still tinkering with as I get this going before we add the final fish that will be the denizens of this tank. So we have nearite snails, we have some autocinglus, and one little baby rainbow that was an egg on that Pogostemon erectus. And I found out through the club member that I got it from, what kind of eggs it could have been, and pretty confident I've narrowed down the species just based on how the fish looks already, which is a Habgood River Trifasciata, which is a very beautiful species when they grow out. They're beautiful, beautiful fish, but I got one, so, not super helpful. So what are we going to do here? I'm testing out a new fertilizer on this. We're still testing both the Aquarium Co-op heater and their CO2 kit on this thing, and those have been provided by Aquarium Co-op, so I guess #partial sponsor. The Fzone, of course, I paid for out of pocket. And then one other fertilizer I'm testing. I'll just grab this stuff, actually. This is Hector's Everything. Hector is a gentleman that I met when I was at the Fishtoberfest in Portland last year, 2022. He has his own aquarium store and worked and developed his own all-in-one powdered fertilizer. Let me open it up. I joke about this because sometimes it doesn't, it can be a little clumpy when it comes out, almost like grated Parmesan in a little the craft containers and stuff like that, right? The cheaper grated Parmesan that you get in a big plastic container like this. And I've kind of laughed to myself as I've been working with this so far for about a month that I'm pouring my Parmesan into my tank. And you might even see some particles of it still in the substrate from today's dose. But it does come with this really handy little nice wooden spoon. I actually really like this thing a lot. Because there's a nice naturey semblance of quality when your fertilizer's dosing method is a scoop per 10 gallons. Easy. There's instructions whether you're CO2 or not on how frequently. And you got a nice little wooden spoon that does it for you. It's kind of quaint. So what I've been doing so far, just for your own understanding, I do a single scoop every day. And it's not a perfectly level scoop. It's like a light dome on the top just because getting it perfectly level out of this is not easy to do quickly. And I'm just doing this quick. And realistically, just looking at the plants and seeing what's going on, I probably actually need to dose more. So that's where I'm tinkering. I'm going to tinker a little bit with how much I'm dosing here, because I am a CO2 injected tank. We have the Fluval 3.0 on this thing. So far the settings aren't super high. It's just an auto mode. I just recently changed the light to give it a little bit more light now that it's kind of matured in some. So it's at 55% for warm white, cool white, 60% pure white. I know, mixed, all weird. 5% blue, and about 25% pink. So mostly focusing on the white spectrum here for this particular one. And you'll notice, I'll get a B-roll shot, but actually I have a pair of them here. A member of the channel directed me to these really nice risers designed specifically for the 3.0 plant on Etsy. They have two varieties. They have ones with the clear acrylic here, and you can even get them etched if you contact the gentleman ahead of time. I didn't worry about that. I just bought a couple different sizes. And this height here, I think this is 4 inches. Those are 3. And I have a 2-inch that is solid because they don't have the clear in the 2-inch. Just as a bonus, I'm pondering putting a second light on this tank because it is kind of putting a lot of CO2 and trying to spread that light out. But I'm trying to test it with the risers first. I really like, because this particular riser has a lock system that literally locks into the design of the fluval plant's little legs. So it just locks in, right? And then it just sits nice and cleanly here on your rim of the tank, raises your light up. I'll leave a link down in the description below. I don't get anything from that. It's just, so far, I'm really liking this. There's been a number of people who've asked about risers for your fluval plant. This is a fairly good option. And they're not terribly expensive. I think it was like $18 for a pair. So, yeah, $20. That included the shipping. Didn't seem too bad to me. But so far, I like it, right? It's raising my light up. I'm getting light where I need it. I just turned my light up a little bit when I added the risers. But I'm not running, like you heard, 55% and 60%. That's not a ton, and this is a 40-gallon breeder, right? So, in theory, you could push your light a lot harder, but because I have a lot of low and some medium demand plants, I don't need super high light. I'm fighting some algae, so it's about balancing things, balancing our light, our nutrients, and CO2, and we'll kind of find that happy balance to where I stop seeing the little bits of algae as this tank settles in. And some of the plants are struggling. We get plants that replace it that do well, all that kind of stuff, and then we just get to enjoy a beautiful tank. Pretty awesome. So with that being said, that's what's going on. This is kind of a combo of the Fzone in action and updates on Fallen Forest. Now that we've had a couple months of it growing and doing its thing and becoming a beautiful tank, getting ready for the final fish to be in here. It got ready for fish, had some snails at first, then got some autosynclus. That little baby started raising up, and now it's time to get that baby just a touch bigger before we move that baby somewhere else and move the final denizens of this tank in. So with that being said, guys, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear in the comments down below what surprised you the most, whether it's the growth, how quiet the Fzone is, the fact that I can only run it on speed 1, or I start like firing air and sucking air into the thing because of my cheap glass. Whatever it may be, I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments down below. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.